Am I looking at the center hole there?
Hi.
Let's try and roll this.
A holistic, incarnational community for everyday people.
Hospitality, simplicity,
centered, generous, and dynamic.
peacemaking, rhythms of prayer.
Spirit, gifts,
Well, if Jesus started a church in our town, what would he do?
friendship, food, good food.
And we really just wanted to create a church that we wanted to go to.
I think it'd be best to describe it more as a family than a church.
In a casual place where people could come as they were, where they were in their life.
We became more of a community that we could just be there and be with each other and love each other and dig into the scriptures together, and that became more real.
We centered around the Eucharist and went from there, and everything else was up for grabs.
We don't use a whole lot of church language. We just are.
We're involved in real, authentic relationship with one another. We strive to be in active, loving relationship with the world around us as well.
You know, people are going to say authentic like 100 times.
It's very real.
It's risk, it's creativity.
You know, we're not that creative.
It's an organic community in the sense that we're very driven with the idea that people's presence really matters in the life of the community.
So we are inviting people to be part of this conversation.
It's a place where you could talk about your journey, or your questions, or your doubts.
But like to be real, to say what you really think, to say what you really struggle with.
We have all different opinions. Not everybody agrees with everybody, and that's such a countercultural idea within the Bible Belt.
We're just a place to be, and we're a place for a lot of walking wounded to come.
For many of our people, we're their last stop on the way out of Christianity.
I can still sit across from somebody I completely disagree with and call them community, and because we have enough room at our table to be able to say, I love you still.
Primarily, Neighbors Abbey is an environment that hosts practices of reconciliation for our neighborhood.
Now it's a little bit more of a village. We've got about half a dozen houses on the same block, and we work with neighbors and friends to do little guerrilla gardens and hang out with folks that are homeless and help kids with homework.
It also has us working together, sometimes using art therapy, sometimes just conversations from community organizing, appreciative inquiry, those kind of things. Sometimes it just looks like a Bible study.
This world needs to be brought back to what we're supposed to be, and that's loving, healthy, whole people that are reconciled to God and reconciled to one another.
We're trying to live like Jesus in a very tangible way.
Theosis is simply an ancient Christian term that refers to becoming like God.
So it's not enough for us to worship the guy. We kind of want to look increasingly like him.
A space where people are unfolding, becoming like God, not just as individuals, but as communities.
House for All Sinners and Saints is a group of folks figuring out how to be a liturgical, Christocentric, social justice-oriented, queer, inclusive, incarnational, contemplative, irreverent, ancient future church with a progressive but deeply rooted theological imagination. At least that's what our website says.
We say we're trying to be about creating a Jesus dojo. We think learning to live life in the way of Jesus is more like a karate studio than a college lecture hall.
An environment, a space where the Spirit of God is allowed to move and change and transform lives and communities.
It's improvisational, it's experimental.
It always sort of feels a little chaotic.
Ultimately, it's not trying to be like anyone else down the road or even any other community across the country or around the world.
Something that doesn't fit a model or maybe isn't in a book about how to plant a church.
You know, I love that I don't feel like I have to do what anybody else is doing and that there's not some formula that I have to follow.
We see ourselves as an interpreting body, so we're interpreting text.
I'm part of that story. I can be like the people in that story.
We actually value the scriptures, crazy enough. It's really fun. We laugh a lot. There are huge frustrations to it.
The reason we have community right now isn't because we're good at it, but because I and you suck at doing community.
It's going to be a journey that will wreck you and will save you at the same time.
It can be awkward. It can be really convicting to hear people tell their stories.
Community is about surrounding ourselves with people who look like the person that we want to become.
The most important thing is to have a place where people can come together and hear the gospel and proclaim it to each other, and that you can do that without a whole bunch of hullabaloo around it, and that it actually ends up really mattering.
You have to be daring and love in a way that is daring. You have to love big.
Just love people, let them come, let them go. And you'll find out that you just build relationships. Some of the best relationships I have with Revolution people are people who've never stepped into our church.
The neat thing is that if you allow yourself to be steered by the people that God brings to you, that your community will continue to thrive. It may look different this year than it looked at last year.
And our worship gatherings and other gatherings would always be a place expecting to relearn who we are by those new folks drawn to us by the Spirit of God.
Well, if you're wanting to start a community, I'd say go move into the community, shop at the community, hang out with the community, get to know the community.
We were very committed to not starting things, doing things, but really following the things that mattered. And so a season of listening was really critical for the things that are now very much a part of our community way of life.
When we talk about being centered, we're more concerned about having a center toward which we're going on a spiritual journey together.
Community is about a way of life towards something. It isn't the goal. It isn't this beautiful, happy thing. It's also a disruptive, disturbing thing.
Deep passions for justice, and there's folks in our communities that have deep passions for beauty, and there's folks that have deep passions around truth, and the community becomes a place for those things to be celebrated together.
But because we were more like a family, we can just be like, hey, this great thing, I found this awesome thing I want to tell you about, and there's this project happening, or there's something in the community this week, and let's all get involved with it.
Get out of your structure, out of your function, your organizational structure, and just begin to be friends with people and love people and care for people.
And willing to question everything. Why do we want to do that? Does that actually serve what we believe we're called here to do?
Go back to your roots and look at why in the world did your theology base begin, where did it come from?
It's just so important to take that chance and to take a posture of experimentation.
And I think for a long time we've had kind of this posture or this posture. Being missional is having an outward posture, a posture that says, I am here and you can come to me.
Think in terms of hospitality and welcoming people, to welcome people the way Jesus would welcome them.
Start with a core of real relationships, which then become very attractive to other people to be part of.
It's okay to fail. There are a lot of things that we've done at Vision that have been just utter failures, and we realize it's okay.
We're not going to get it right, but we're going to try and love one another and love the neighborhood and community and city that we're a part of.
I ran from my calling to plant a church for 10 years, and it took God haunting me. It no longer was a dream anymore. It became and evolved into a haunting.
Develop a really disciplined life of prayer, which is a part of discerning what God is saying.
It is like preparing to give birth to a child. Planned or unplanned, it comes along, you've got 9 crazy months, you think you're prepared, and then out comes blood and gore and beauty and hope all together. I'm a parent. I've got no idea what I'm doing, but with the hope and help from others, maybe I can make it through. And there's an amazing bits of beauty and growth and first words and first steps and first bits of hope.
One of the best quotes that I had from a community I went to was they had printed t-shirts that said, "Everybody wants a revolution, but nobody wants to do the dishes."
Use your unique gifts of the experience that you've had through life, and love people like you'd want to be loved, serve people like you'd want to be served, and don't give up.
That's part of the journey, that's part of the growing, and that's part of what forms disciples and forms the community.
This I'm excited about. any network that's committed to not only helping develop communities, but network the people who are in those communities, because it can be quite, in the traditional church landscape, it can be quite lonely to be in a community that's hard to explain to the very people that you're supposed to be working with. And so this I'm for. I'm excited about it.
I think it's an awesome name. I think that's really what we are trying to be and do.